wait a minute, okay, let's be tough on the issue, not each other, and call people on that. When we see another disconnect, pointing that out.
Be open and vulnerable and say, okay, we haven't got all of this right, and kind of sticking up your hand and saying, okay, we didn't get it right, but we want to get it right from now on. Can we reset? Probably a good time now to segue over to this concept of revitalization, particularly when you spoke about moving from one team over to the larger agency, etc. What we're talking about here is the concept that you might have a team that was potentially once high performing, but over time, fractures start to appear. So when a team is formed, there's all kinds of team performance models that you can use, Drexler, Sibbett, and others, and they all go through some kind of forming stage. They go through forming, storming, norming, performing. That's probably the most common one that everyone knows, but there's a number of these models where you're building a team from scratch and you're building it up to be a high performance team. How you do that? How do you step into a stage where you've got a team that may have had some glory days, but those glory days are behind them, and now that they're bickering and they're arguing and the relationships are starting to fracture?
We spend time doing one-on-one interviews with the top tier of that team, generally 2 levels. And we use a strategic planning model for this. And we create a SWOT analysis of that team. Because if you did it, generally when you find that, when you're brought in on that type of engagement and that's described to you, the trust is very low. So you've got to figure out a way how to jumpstart trust, which we know it takes a long time to build trust, but it doesn't take long to destroy trust, right?
Yeah.
We then facilitate a meeting and we frame the issues to the team on their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we frame those disconnects because generally there isn't consensus about most of those areas. And I'm a big believer in sharing trade-offs or disconnects. So you as a team, over half of you see it this way, but there's a disconnect because the others see it just the opposite, or there's something that's different than them. And we share that with them because there's no attribution. We do that on a confidential basis. We do brief the executive, but they'll go, well, who said that? Everyone is assured of confidentiality because this doesn't work unless you do that. Yeah. And then we do a series of group exercises with that. Generally what we'll do is we'll array the SWOT analysis and we'll do, the old whiteboard with the stick-ums, all that, the circles, all those things that we use in these dynamic sessions. And we will ask them to rank those areas of issues. And you do workout sessions and they report back and they ask questions. And then they end up setting up cross-cutting teams to do the work on that and share that information. An organization that really wants to change and go back to being a high-performing team is willing to share some of the feedback because they're not the only ones that think that. But it's those kinds of interviews and then starkly arraying that information and work with the leader to be able to acknowledge where they could do a better job, both in the opening of it and at the wrap up. And our team works very hard to, even in those conversations, say, wait a minute, okay, let's be tough on the issue, not each other, and call people on that. And also, when we see another disconnect, pointing that out so that we're trying to model that openness of dialogue, which has probably been closed down. But when we've done that with teams, it's another sort of eureka. But when you do it in a group that isn't trust each other, the real information doesn't get arrayed on that. that board. And so they're going, oh, I had no idea.
Lots of key words there again, Deb. So the first one around trust. So trust probably has been broken. So you do need to have that ability to be open about that. Be open and vulnerable and say, okay, we haven't got all of this right, and kind of sticking up your hand and saying, okay, we didn't get it right, but we want to get it right from now on. Can we reset? I'm hearing some of that in there. Having open communication again and engagement, having people involved in that process to revitalize the team and get it back together. And openly sharing what everyone thinks the problems are. And I think you'll find that most of the time the vision or the desire that everyone is trying to get towards is a common one, and they've just kind of lost sight of it somewhere along the line. And if they talk to each other again, they'll discover that common ground again.